Millionaire finds newborn outside hospital. Note says, please raise him better than I could. The October wind cut through downtown Chicago with surgical precision, sending yellow leaves spiraling past the towering glass facade of Mercy General Hospital. Alex Whitmore pulled his charcoal wool coat tighter as he strode down the sidewalk, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the wet pavement with the rhythm of a man who had just closed a $12 million acquisition deal. At Tateseed 42, Alex had built Whitmore Industries from a small tech startup into a Fortune 500 empire. His life was measured in quarterly reports, board meetings, and calculated risks that always paid off. Tonight was no different, except for the detour he'd taken past the hospital instead of heading straight to his penthouse. His phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket, probably his assistant Margaret, with updates on tomorrow's merger discussions, or perhaps another congratulatory call from his business partners. Success has a way of making everyone want to be your friend. As he rounded the corner toward the hospital side entrance, a shortcut to the parking garage where his Tesla waited, something made him stop dead in his tracks. There, nestled against the brick wall beside a service door, was a small bundle wrapped in what appeared to be a cream-colored blanket. At first glance, it looked like discarded laundry or perhaps medical supplies. But something about the careful way it was positioned, almost reverently placed, made Alex's businessman instincts kick in. He approached cautiously, his breath forming small clouds in the crisp autumn air. The bundle was smaller than he'd initially thought, and as he got closer, he could see the corner of an envelope peeking out from beneath the fabric. Alex knelt down, his expensive suit pants touching the cold concrete. His hands, usually steady, during million-dollar handshakes, trembled slightly as he pulled back a corner of the blanket. A tiny face, peaceful in sleep, appeared before him. Pink cheeks, impossibly small fingers curled into fists, and the gentle rise and fall of a chest no bigger than his palm. A newborn couldn't be more than a few days old. Jesus Christ, he whispered, looking around frantically. The side street was empty, except for a few parked cars and the distant hum of traffic from the main avenue. No one in sight, no frantic mother searching, no hospital staff rushing to retrieve a missing infant. With shaking hands, Alex carefully extracted the envelope. His name was written across it in neat, feminine handwriting, Mr. Alexander Whitmore, his full name. Someone knew who he was. Inside, a single sheet of paper bore a message that would change everything. Mr. Whitmore, I know this will seem impossible to understand, but I've been watching you for months. I've read about your success, your philanthropy, your character. I know you're a good man who could give my son everything I cannot. His name is David. He was born 3 days ago, healthy and perfect. I'm 17 years old with no family, no money, and no future to offer him. But you could give him the world. Please raise him better than I could. Please love him the way every child deserves to be loved. I'm not abandoning him. I'm giving him a chance at the life he deserves. There are people who will try to take him from you. Don't let them. Protect him. He's innocent in all of this. I'm sorry for putting this burden on you, but I believe you're the answer to my prayers. Someone who loves him enough to let him go. Alex read the letter 3 times, each word sinking deeper into his consciousness. His phone continued buzzing, but the sounds of the city seemed to fade away. Here he was, a man who controlled boardrooms and commanded respect from senators and CEOs, completely unprepared for this moment. The baby, David, stirred slightly, making a small sound that wasn't quite a whimper. Alex found himself reaching out instinctively, his finger touching the infant's tiny hand. Immediately, those impossibly small fingers wrapped around his index finger with surprising strength. "What the hell am I supposed to do with you?" he murmured. But there was no annoyance in his voice. Instead, something he hadn't felt in years was stirring in his chest, a protective instinct he didn't know he possessed. Alex looked around again. Still no one. The rational part of his brain, the part that had built his empire, told him to call the police, turn the baby over to Child Protective Services, let the system handle this impossible situation. But another part, a part he'd buried under years, of corporate ruthlessness, whispered something different. "Please raise him better than I could." Those words echoed in his mind as he carefully gathered the baby into his arms, blanket and all. David was surprisingly light, warm against his chest through the expensive fabric of his coat. The infant's eyes opened for a moment, bright blue, alert, trusting, before closing again in peaceful sleep. Standing there on that empty sidewalk, Alex Whitmore made the most impulsive decision of his calculated life. Instead of calling the authorities, he pulled out his phone and dialed his driver. "Marcus, change of plans. I need you to pick me up at Mercy General, side entrance on Wells Street." "And Marcus?" He paused, looking down at the sleeping child in his arms. "Stop at a pharmacy on the way home. I need baby supplies." The silence on the other end of the line lasted exactly 3 seconds. Marcus had been his driver for 8 years and had learned not to question the eccentric requests of billionaires. "Right away, Mr. Whitmore. Baby supplies. Any particular brand?" "I have no idea. Just everything a baby might need." As he waited for Marcus, Alex found himself studying David's face. The child was beautiful in that way all newborns are, perfect, unmarked by the world's disappointments and compromises. But there was something else, something that made Alex's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. When Marcus arrived, a distinguished black man in his 50s who had seen Alex through divorces, hostile takeovers, and family deaths, without ever losing his composure, his eyebrows raised only slightly at the sight of his boss holding a baby. "Will you be needing a car seat, sir?" Marcus asked, as if wealthy men regularly acquired infants on Tuesday evenings. "God, yes. Everything. I don't know what I'm doing, Marcus. Few people do when it comes to children, Mr. Whitmore. But they figured it out. The ride to Alex's Gold Coast penthouse was surreal. David slept peacefully against his chest while Marcus navigated Chicago traffic with his usual efficiency. Through the tinted windows, Alex watched the city lights blur past, the same city where he'd built his fortune, where he'd won and lost and won again. But tonight, everything looked different. His penthouse occupied the entire top floor of one of Chicago's most exclusive buildings. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan and the city's skyline. The minimalist decor, all clean lines, expensive art, and careful emptiness, suddenly seemed cold and unwelcoming. This was a space designed for a man who lived alone, who entertained clients and impressed investors. It wasn't a place for a baby. Alex stood in his living room, still holding David, and realized he had absolutely no idea what to do next. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, managed thousands of employees, spoken before Congress about industry regulation. But this sleeping infant in his arms represented a challenge unlike anything he'd ever faced. His phone rang. "Margaret, Alex." "And thank God. I've been trying to reach you for an hour. The Peterson Group wants to schedule a follow-up meeting for Thursday, and the Times reporter is still waiting for your comment on the acquisition. Where are you?" "I'm home, Margaret. Home. But you said you'd be celebrating at the Union Club until midnight. The mayor's supposed to meet you there." Alex looked down at David, who had opened his eyes and was staring up at him with that unnervingly direct gaze that newborns sometimes have, as if they could see straight through to your soul. "Cancel everything for the rest of the week," he said quietly. "Cancel everything, Alex. Are you feeling all right? The Peterson meeting alone is worth $40 million. I said cancel everything, Margaret. Something's come up. Something important." There was a long pause. Margaret had been his assistant for 12 years. She'd never heard him use the word important to describe anything that wasn't directly related to business. Is everything okay? Do you need me to call Dr. Morrison? I'm fine, I need some time to figure something out. A personal matter. Another pause. Alex Whitmore didn't have personal matters. His life was his work, and his work was his life. Everyone knew that. I'll reschedule everything, Margaret said finally. But Alex, if you need anything at all, you call me. Understand? After hanging up, Alex carried David to the kitchen, a showpiece of marble and stainless steel that he rarely used for anything more complicated than coffee. He had no idea what babies ate, when they ate, or how often. The bottle Marcus had purchased sat on the counter like an artifact from an alien civilization. As if sensing his confusion, David began to fuss, making small mewing sounds that gradually escalated toward what Alex feared might become a full-scale crying fit. Panic set in immediately. Okay, he muttered, attempting to warm the bottle under hot water. You're hungry, right? That's what babies do. They eat, they sleep, other things I probably don't want to think about right now. The feeding was a disaster. Formula everywhere, on his shirt, on the baby, on the Italian marble countertop. But eventually, David seemed satisfied, his tiny body relaxing against Alex's chest as he drifted back to sleep. Sitting in his leather chair, a piece that had cost more than most people's cars, Alex found himself staring out at the city lights and thinking about the letter. There are people who will try to take him from you. Don't let them. What had the mother meant by that? Who would try to take David, and why had she chosen him specifically? He wasn't exactly known for his paternal instincts. His ex-wife had made that clear during their divorce proceedings 3 years ago. You care more about your company than you ever cared about me, Sarah had said during one of their final arguments. You wouldn't know how to love something that couldn't be bought, sold, or leveraged. Maybe she'd been right then. But looking down at David's sleeping face, Alex felt something shifting inside him, a fierce protectiveness that had nothing to do with logic or profit margins. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We know you have him. This won't end well for either of you. Alex's blood ran cold. He looked around his penthouse, his fortress of glass and steel 40 stories above the street, and suddenly felt very vulnerable. Whoever had sent that message knew about David, knew Alex had taken him in. Moving quickly but carefully to avoid waking the baby, Alex activated his building security system and called his head of security, James Morrison, a former FBI agent, who handled threats against Whitmore Industries and its CEO. Jim, I need you at my place, now, and bring backup. What's the situation, boss? Alex looked down at David, still sleeping peacefully despite the storm gathering around them. I think I might have just made the most dangerous decision of my life. The next morning brought a Chicago autumn at its most beautiful. Golden sunlight streaming through Alex's floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the hardwood floors in warm amber hues. Under different circumstances, it would have been the kind of morning that made him appreciate his success. Instead, he sat in his home office, exhausted and unshaven, researching everything he could find about infant care, while David slept in a makeshift crib he'd constructed from cushions and blankets. James Morrison had arrived within an hour of Alex's call, along with 2 additional security specialists. They'd swept the penthouse for surveillance devices, found nothing, but established a security protocol that made Alex's home feel more like a fortress than ever. Still, the threatening text message haunted him. We know you have him. Who was we? And what did they want with an abandoned newborn? His research had kept him up most of the night. Between feedings and diaper changes, a skill he was gradually, messily acquiring, he'd learned about infant development, feeding schedules, and the legal complexities of what he'd done. Technically, he'd committed a crime by not immediately reporting the abandoned child to authorities. But something in that letter, some desperation in the mother's words, had convinced him that involving the system might put David in more danger, not less. Margaret arrived at 10 sharp, as she always did when Alex worked from home. But instead of finding him in his usual spot, reviewing contracts over coffee, she discovered him in the living room, carefully changing a diaper while talking softly to the infant. "Well," she said after a moment of stunned silence, "this explains the cancelled meetings." Alex looked up, suddenly aware of his appearance, rumpled clothes, 2 days of stubble, hair askew. Not exactly the polished image of a Fortune 500 CEO. "Margaret, I need you to do something for me." Quietly. She set down her briefcase and tablet, her expression shifting to the focused attention she reserved for crisis management. "What kind?" "Of quietly. I need you to research private adoption agencies in Illinois, specifically ones that handle unconventional circumstances. And I need legal counsel, someone who specializes in family law, but who can also be discreet." Margaret looked at David, who was staring up at Alex with those unnervingly alert blue eyes. "How old is he?" "A few days, maybe a week. I'm not exactly sure." "Alex," Margaret said carefully, "where did this baby come from?" The question he'd been dreading. Alex had built his career on transparency in business dealings, but this situation required a different approach. He told her about finding David outside the hospital, about the letter, but left out the threatening text message. No need to worry her more than necessary. When he finished, Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You do realize this is kidnapping, technically speaking? I realize this is complicated." "Complicated," Margaret's voice rose slightly. "Alex, this is a human being, not a business acquisition. There are protocols, legal procedures, systems in place to protect children. And those systems would have put him in foster care while they searched for his mother. A 17-year-old girl with no family and no resources." Alex finished securing the diaper and lifted David into his arms. "Someone specifically asked me to protect him. I'm going to honor that request." Margaret studied her boss's face. A face she'd seen navigate hostile board meetings, congressional hearings, and merger negotiations without flinching. But she'd never seen this expression before, fierce protectiveness mixed with something that looked almost like love. "You've made up your mind about this." "I've made up my mind about this," she sighed. "Then we do it right. I'll find you the best family law attorney in the city, someone who can help you navigate the legal process of making this official. But Alex, you need to understand, this is going to change everything. Your schedule, your travel, your entire life. Are you prepared for that?" Alex looked down at David, who had fallen asleep against his chest. The weight of the infant, barely 7 pounds, somehow felt more significant than any business deal he'd ever closed. "I think I'm starting to be." Margaret's research proved invaluable. By that afternoon, she'd arranged a consultation with Catherine Chen, one of Chicago's most respected family law attorneys. Catherine had handled high-profile adoptions, custody battles, and complex family situations for 20 years. More importantly, she was known for her discretion when working with wealthy clients who valued their privacy. The meeting took place in Alex's penthouse rather than Catherine's office, another security precaution James had insisted upon. Catherine was a small, elegant woman in her 50s, with the kind of precise manner that suggested she didn't waste anyone's time, including her own. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, settling into one of his leather chairs while Alex held David. "Margaret has given me the basic outline of your situation. Before we proceed, I need you to understand the legal realities of what you're proposing." "I'm listening." "First, abandoning a child, even with a note requesting specific care, doesn't constitute legal relinquishment of parental rights. The biological mother could change her mind at any time and demand the child's return. Second, your failure to report finding an abandoned infant to authorities within a reasonable time frame is a misdemeanor offense. Third, even if the biological mother never surfaces, you'll need to go through formal adoption proceedings, which include home studies, background checks, and court appearances. Alex absorbed this information while gently rocking David, who was beginning to stir. What are my options? Realistically, the safest legal path is to contact Child Protective Services immediately, report finding the child, and then begin formal adoption proceedings through the system. It will take longer, but it protects you legally. And the other path. Catherine's expression grew more serious. We proceed as if you're a prospective adoptive parent who's been privately approached by a birth mother. We prepare all the necessary documentation for a private adoption, conduct the required home study, and establish a timeline for legal finalization. If the birth mother never surfaces to contest the adoption, we finalize it after the required waiting period. What's the risk in that approach? If the birth mother or anyone else with a legal claim to the child comes forward and can prove you knew the child wasn't legally yours to keep, you could face kidnapping charges. It's a significant risk, Mr. Whitmore. Alex was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. David had woken up and was making soft cooing sounds, his tiny hand grasping at Alex's shirt. There's something else, Alex said finally. I received a threatening text message last night. Someone knows I have David and doesn't want me to keep him. Catherine's eyebrows raised. From whom? Unknown number, but the implication was clear. Someone else has an interest in this child. That changes things considerably, Catherine said. If there are parties with conflicting claims to the child, or if there's any indication of coercion or criminal activity surrounding his birth or abandonment, we need to involve law enforcement. The mother's letter mentioned that people would try to take him from me. She asked me to protect him. Catherine leaned forward. Mr. Whitmore, I need you to consider the possibility that this child might be at the center of something more complex than a simple teen pregnancy. Organized adoption fraud, child trafficking, custody disputes involving criminal elements. These situations exist, and they're dangerous. As if summoned by her words, Alex's phone buzzed with another text from the same unknown number. You have 48 hours to return what doesn't belong to you. This is your only warning. He showed the message to Catherine, whose expression grew increasingly grave. We need to involve the FBI, she said immediately. No. Alex's response was immediate and firm. If we involve federal authorities, they'll take David into protective custody while they investigate. I won't let that happen. Alex, this could be a matter of national security, or organized crime, or it could be a lot of things. But right, now it's a baby who needs protection, and someone specifically asked me to provide that protection. I'm not backing down. Catherine studied him for a long moment. You understand that I can't officially advise you to ignore potential threats or avoid involving appropriate authorities. I understand. But I can tell you that if you're determined to proceed, you'll need more than just legal counsel. You'll need security, you'll need contingency plans, and you'll need to be prepared for this situation to escalate quickly. After Catherine left, Alex found himself pacing his penthouse while David slept in his arms. The afternoon sun was beginning to set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. From his windows, Chicago looked peaceful, a city going about its business, unaware of the drama playing out 40 stories above. James appeared in the doorway of the living room, his expression serious. Boss, we've got a problem. Alex's pulse quickened. What kind of problem? Building security cameras caught something interesting about an hour ago. 3 men in dark suits entered the lobby, asked the concierge about you specifically. When he told them you weren't receiving visitors, they left, but they didn't leave the building. What do you mean? They took the elevator to the parking garage. Never came back up. My guess is they're conducting surveillance, trying to establish patterns. Alex looked down at David, still sleeping peacefully. How had his life become a thriller movie in the span of 24 hours? What do you recommend? We have options. I can contact the Chicago PD, have them questioned for trespassing, but that might escalate things. Alternatively, we can arrange for you and the baby to relocate temporarily while we figure out who these people are and what they want. The idea of running, of hiding, went against every instinct Alex had developed over 2 decades of business warfare. But looking at David's innocent face, he realized that some battles weren't about winning. They were about protecting what mattered most. How quickly can you arrange a safe location? I have a secure facility in Wisconsin, rural area, private security, completely off the grid. We could be there in 2 hours. Alex walked to his windows, looking out over the city that had made him rich and powerful. Somewhere down there, people were watching his building, waiting for an opportunity to take David away. People who had sent threatening messages and conducted surveillance and clearly had resources of their own. For the first time since building his empire, Alex Whitmore felt truly afraid. Not for himself. He'd faced hostile takeovers, congressional investigations, and death threats from disgruntled investors. But for this tiny person in his arms who depended on him completely. His phone rang. Margaret. Alex, I've been doing more research on that family law attorney I recommended. Catherine Chen has handled some very unusual cases over the years. Adoptions involving witness protection, custody battles with organized crime connections, situations where children needed to disappear completely for their own safety. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe she understands your situation better than most. And Alex? I also found something else. There have been 3 similar cases in the past. Here, newborns abandoned outside hospitals in Chicago, each with notes requesting specific individuals take custody. In all 3 cases, the children disappeared from the foster care system within weeks of being found. Alex's blood ran cold. Disappeared how? No one knows. The files were sealed, the foster families were relocated, and the children vanished. Alex, I think David might not be the first. As the implications of Margaret's research sank in, David began to stir in Alex's arms. Those bright blue eyes opened, fixing on Alex's face with that unsettling directness that newborns sometimes possess. In that moment, looking into those trusting eyes, Alex made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He wasn't just protecting a baby anymore. He was fighting a war he didn't understand against enemies he couldn't identify. But he was going to win because losing wasn't an option, not when David's life depended on it. "James!" he called out, his voice steady, despite the storm of emotions churning inside him. "Prepare a safe house. We leave in an hour." "And Margaret," he continued into the phone, "cancel everything for the next month. All meetings, all travel, all commitments. Tell anyone who asks that I'm dealing with a family emergency." "Alex," Margaret's voice was worried. "What if they ask what kind of family emergency?" Alex looked down at David, who was now making soft, cooing sounds, his tiny fingers grasping at the air. "Tell them I'm learning to be a father." As the sun set over Chicago, Alex Whitmore, billionaire, CEO, master of the corporate universe, packed a diaper bag for the first time in his life, preparing to disappear into the Wisconsin wilderness, with a baby who had somehow become the most important thing in his world. The threatening messages, the mysterious surveillance, the other missing children, all of it would have to wait. Right now, his priority was simple: keep David safe, whatever the cost, even if it meant giving up everything he'd spent his life building. Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.